Buford's rushing us up to get started this morning. We're looking at beautiful murals that are being started in our building. And I hope I'm not totally out of camera, but I hated to cover up our new decorations and stuff that we have up here. We've needed that for a long time. Hope everybody had a good week this week, other than it's been a horrible, tragic week in the world. It seems like things aren't getting better the more men progress and learn and the capabilities and stuff. It seems like the more evil that comes out of it, the more divided and the children of this generation, there's just something really bad wrong. There's an isolation, and there's just we talk about the family. The families have been really broken and torn apart, and people spending time on these phones and doing stuff and not doing the things we did with our family. And I was thinking about, sometimes I kind of giggle when we go by. I don't know if y'all remember even going to Harrisburg. There used to be a little park in the middle of the road going over there, like a little picnic area. That I know y'all all remember when we would go on vacation. We didn't stop and eat places. Neil, you may be too young. We stopped at roadside parks, and they were big fun. You had, your mama had packed up the lunch and stopped at that park and have a picnic and just enjoy your family. I think I might have told y'all this though. We had my brother's birthday party, instead of having a big venue like they do for birthday parties at one of those roadside parks. And my mother had this old cake pan that at the worst moments, it would just unlock and dump. And she had a big strawberry cake made for him. And we're over at that roadside park, and it has those little gravels in it. And that cake pan decides to dump, and his cake turns upside down, and the icing is gravel at that point. He was so mad at her, he didn't talk. She didn't do that on purpose.
So he said, get your spoons and join in. We'll sit around and see everything.
Yeah, and pick the rocks. Yeah. Well, look, fast forward, might have been at my dad's funeral. This girl I worked with, they made this shaved chocolate cake, and she brought it to me and gave it to me. Well, the pan came open on the end, but I ate it. It's like Neil said, the 5-second rule. It's like, that's all right. I might have pushed whatever was on it, but I ate it anyway. But hope Neil wasn't too mean to y'all for the last couple of weeks, or you listened to him. You know how when we were in school, if you got a substitute teacher, you really took advantage of them. I don't know how much substitutes get paid, but I know we always gave them a lot. They had to earn their money when they came. We were to learn things.
I don't know why everybody brings coffee.
That were they?
Stay away.
So wanted to go back just a little bit, because we had gone from studying out of the book of James when I had left, and he moved into the book of 1 Peter. And I was reading about when Peter had written this book and the things that he was writing about. It was at a time, which all of these books were, that the church was young, and there was lots of things happening in the church. There was lots of persecution of the non-Jewish people, because this was something totally new to the Jewish nation, the people that had practiced the Jewish religion. So this new Christianity had come in, and they weren't for it. They weren't happy about it. Plus, the Romans weren't happy about it. The Romans were being antagonized a little bit from the Jewish nation to kind of make it even worse. So the Christians had it even harder, because neither of them liked them. And Peter is writing to the people to strengthen them, to tell them what the bottom line of what you're striving for. This is the goal. He wanted to remind us this bad stuff, and it's very fitting today too, and it always has been. We say the Bible is never old. There's never anything in the Bible that doesn't pertain to us today as well as it did. The things that we've talked about that have happened, it's the same for us today. We have to hold on to these promises. The world appears to be out of control, but it isn't out of the Lord's control. He still has won the battle. The end of time is His. We have to persevere through this. We have to keep our eye on the goal and keep moving forward. As hard as it gets, and things, we see things like this in Texas, it happens, but it seems like it's at a distance, but it's, things break down to closer and closer to, something like that could very easily happen here as well as it did there. And these things are difficult, and we have to hold on to our faith and hopefully spread these things and figure out, what's going with the society and help people that need the help and that are, that these terrible things are going on, whether they truly are or whether, it's a mental health issue or whatever. Well, we're to be the light of the world, and that's what Peter's talking to these people, to remain and be a holy people that stand out amongst the evil. This is something totally unrelated, but I wanted to tell you, I heard it on TV and I thought it was pretty profound what was said. That we know it's Memorial Day, so I've been watching the History Channel every minute I get all weekend, because I think we need to know how we got to be a free country that we did, and I think we need to respect those that have served us, those that are serving us, those that didn't come back from the service and what they gave for us. But this show, they were talking about the Great Raid when the Rangers went in to save the 500 men that were left from the Bataan concentration camps. And they said these Rangers were going in, that there were, I don't remember the number of Rangers, there were 500 men in the camp, and they said these 500 men, a lot of them aren't able to walk to make it out of this place because they've been in a concentration camp, they've been starved, beat, diseases. There were thousands of enemies around them. So when these Rangers didn't have to go in and get them, but they said, we're going to go in and get these men. And from what they said on this History Channel, they did go in and get those men, and they brought every one of them back out of that camp when they did. But it says the Great Raid was a rescue mission in Bataan. Rangers knew they might die trying to rescue these 500 men. Jesus knew He would die to rescue us. That it wasn't a might die, but he chose to come here and live His life knowing He would die to rescue us. And I just thought that, that was something that was, I guess you think of it in all different ways and you hear it, but when you go into something knowing a certain death, it takes love to do that. And I think these Rangers in that mission of the love for their fellow men, that they went in to do that and risk that. Yeah. So I wanted to go back just a little bit to last week to see if y'all were listening to Neil. He wasn't even there. It says, the name of it was A Call to Holy Living, and in the introduction it said, holiness lies in the imitation of God. It says, we must make it our constant effort by the promised help of His Holy Spirit to become partakers of His holiness. Holiness is a separation from all that defiles. They must not fashion themselves after the likeness of the lust of the flesh and lust of the eyes, pride of life. For the image of Christ cannot be traced upon the soul that bears impressions of these evil things. So he's talking about, our goal is to imitate Christ. We're not to imitate, which, people do every day, imitate actors, actresses, famous people that do anything, because we see, once you get a closer look at these lives, they're not as happy as we think they are. That they seem to have it all and to be rich and wealthy and to have fame and fortune. So why do they have, what happened to Elvis? Why would he have such a problem with drugs and stuff like that? He seemed to have the world by the tail, and, people loved him, but it's not the happiness. There's still the emptiness that only the Lord can fill: money, fame, fortune. And it said here, I liked how it said it, that Christ cannot be traced upon the soul that bears the impression of the evil things. So we have to separate ourselves from that. We can't be both. You can't live and love the world and love Christ like he wants us to love him. We have to separate and be a person that somebody would say, Neil, he's just a different kind of guy. We need to stand out separate, even when all this stuff is going in. It said, as the worship of the impure gods of the heathen molds the character of the worships into their image, so worship of Jehovah molds the character of his professed friends into his image, and they become like him. So, whatever it is that we worship, whether we admit we're worshiping it or not, some people have a hard time. I don't worship my boat. I remember the story Brother Owen would tell about the guy that had chosen to go out on his boat, and then on a Sunday instead of going to church, and then I think he said he never went boating again after that. But you can like stuff, and it's not to like it, but when it just consumes every quiet moment you have, you're thinking about something, whatever it may be to do. That's when it overrides our worship, when you let it get so deep. And it's talking about, the first verse was gird up your loins and be sober. And it was talking about when men girded up their loins, they put on their strength to go into battle. That was the strength of their thing. And the verse here said, continue to expect all that God has promised, and particularly that utmost salvation, that glorification of the body and soul, which you shall obtain at the revelation of Christ when he shall come to judge the world. So in the midst of all that goes on and all the sadness and the weeping and the things that, and the outlook and the wars that there's always now fear that some other nation is going to rise up. But it says continue to expect all that God has promised. When you expect something, you have a real great knowledge in your heart that that's going to happen when you expect it, right? That you don't just think maybe he'll do that. I expect these promises to come true. I am waiting for these things that the Bible says. I don't think maybe that they're going to happen. I expect that they will. Don't know when they'll happen, but that's a part of carrying on and continuing your faith in the midst of whatever is going on, because we expect that these things will come into place, as he said. All right. So this week I have to make sure now that I'm on the right lesson and know what day it is, because I never know what that is. God's chosen people, and we're in 1 Peter chapter 2, and we're going to be looking at verses 1 through 12. It says in the introduction, let us walk holy before him. And I looked up the word holy, and it says dedicated or consecrated to, sacred So it's something that you are attached to, that you're going to spend your time striving for it, but it's also something that you hold sacred to your heart. It's something that you want to keep and protect it. You don't want to defile it with anything of the world. So let's read a few verses as we go. Start in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 1. We'll go to 3. It says, "Wherefore, laying aside all malice, all guile, hypocrisies and envies, and all evil speakings, as newborn babes, desire the sincere milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby. If so, be ye that have tasted that the Lord is gracious." And so he's saying that as newborn Christians, there's things that just come natural in the world. And as Angie works in the school system, so she probably was faced with it daily, even when her kids were grown. Even from a young age, kids can be mean. They can be as mean as any mean adult you've seen. And it's just like this innate part of our spirit, that we have this meanness in us that can be, when you think that they have an innocence to them as well, but there's a mean that, they get bullied and they do some of the things. And and as parents, children learn from what they see. We can tell them all day long not to do this, but if they see you doing it, you're wasting your time. If you don't live appropriately in front of them, they're going to do what they see, not what they hear you say when you're doing something else.
Well, I'm talking like 4-year-olds, some younger, when they do, biggest part of it is words. And they'll look at you and tell it. I do that at home, because my mom and dad do that. We just tell them, well, you can't do it here.
And that's what they see, and to them it seems right. Yeah.
It's not really their fault, because
Right.
that's what they're being taught.
Yes. And you can't override it in a few hours. We've talked about even that the church isn't responsible for raising up our children. They're in church a few hours a week, get what you can't override what they learn daily from their parents and what they see and mimic. And, when somebody does that, you can't hardly fuss at somebody that's doing what you're teaching them and the way that you're living and teaching them. It's hard to correct them unless you correct yourself. So, and that was pouring over into these people's religious life. Once they became Christian, they still had some of these bad habits that they had learned before that.
That's a nature, carnal nature that all of us are born with. I'm glad that we can be delivered from. And it speaks to us that we have control of our life completely.
Yes. And they,
Or we would be just like it.
Yes.
Till we die.
Yeah. And continually becoming worse instead of continually striving to be better.
Because until we really give our all to the Lord, we can't control it.
No.
None of us can.
Yeah. Me and
We do
Angie,
everything to Him, He helps us control it. Where He gets rid of that old nature in our life.
right, you don't really after a while have to control it because it's removed
Right.
after he's dealt with you and you've learned.
There'll be temptations, but temptation isn't a sin until you get into it.
Do it. And that always happens.
Yeah.
You've told us that it doesn't get easier as you get, as you have more years with Christ. But you can overcome
Right.
things that used to give you a hard time before. He lays several things that I'm assuming must be maybe specifics that he's seen and dealt with in these churches. He talks about laying aside all malice. It says refers to ill will and disposition to injure others without cause. And that's kind of like we were talking about, with kids or whatever, calling names or whatever, and adults do. Sometimes you just get in this spirit that you just want to be mean, you don't have a reason, or maybe somebody's mischeerful all the time, and let's knock her down today and do, they just have that natural will to want to do those things. It says guile includes deceit of all kinds, flattery, falsehood, imposing upon one another's ignorance. So taking advantage of people and doing real sneaky, underhanded things. It talks about hypocritical. We've talked about that's an actor. When you act one way and you're really the other, and you might pretend to be somebody's friend when you really don't like them at all, but there's something in it for you. It's envies. We know envies. If you we were looking at Sheila's pretty truck on the way in here this morning, and shiny and stuff. If if you're envious of something that somebody, and it says evil speaking, any reproachful, unkind, or slanderous speaking, which my mother always used to say, if you don't have something nice to say, then don't say anything about it. And sometimes that's hard, and sometimes we need to do it no matter how hard it is. There's a lot more words than need to be sometimes. And it says, as newborn babies desire the sincere milk of the word that ye may grow. We've talked about in past studies that, the beginning of becoming a Christian is like a baby on milk. It's smaller steps. It's harder for us to overcome. There's things we have to work on. Like Patty said, there's things that come against us and we start working on them like a child. But as we grow and as we continue to do that, those things are going to be things that don't give us issue anymore. It's like, I don't know why that bothered me so much. It's, that we should continue to go from level to level as we gain strength from our Christianity, that baby stuff shouldn't bother us anymore, that we should constantly be moving forward and not still or look back. It's a forward movement. And it says, if so, be ye have tasted that the Lord is precious. We know all his promises to us, and the closer we get to them and we grasp them, and we know in our heart that these promises are true to us, and it helps us to sustain and to not be involved in all these things that we might be tempted to do. Did we not have this promise ahead of us to look forward to? I wonder how people that don't have a promise handle this world, because it is a very difficult time right now. And if there's nothing, if you think, are we going to continually spiral like that I can see hopelessness in that. I mean, that would be a very easy place to be. Good morning, Eddie and Janet. Y'all are good and quiet this morning. Starting at verse 4, it says, to whom coming as into a living stone, disallowed indeed of men, but chosen of God and precious. Ye also as lively stones are built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God by Jesus Christ. Wherefore also it is contained in the scripture, behold, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, elect, precious, and he that believeth on him shall not be confounded. And a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense, even to them which stumble at the word, being disobedient, wherefore also were appointed. Okay, it says, who coming into the living stone, disallowed indeed of men, but chosen of God. And it starts out, it says they had come to the salvation and now must continually to come daily through faith, prayer, and holy living. So being a Christian is not I'm gonna go up to church Sunday and it's taken care of and I'll go out and live and wait for the Lord. You know, it's something daily that we have to take up. And even Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament, and we saw what faith and dedication to the death he had, he said that he had to die to self daily, that it wasn't something that was once and done for him, that it's a work that you have to pay particular attention and not slide back into your old ways. And especially, like we said, at first in babies, when you haven't gotten used to this new life, and you can't just let your guard down because, you know, as Patty's told us, no matter how long we've been a Christian, he's going to come after us. And he's going to come after us in different ways and different thoughts and things in our life that he's not going to let down because he's going to say, well, you know, Patty's been a Christian a long time, I can't get her.
Come after our heart.
Yeah,
I'm gonna try.
yeah.
Well, the ones that are not Christians, you don't worry about them.
Yes, yeah.
The ones that are Christians, the ones he's going to take down.
Yeah, if he's not working hard on you, he's already got you. Yeah, but you know, just the things that have put in your mind that, you know, you're not good enough for you. Yes, that's the hard part is, yeah.
The ones that are not, you know, Christian enough, he can see that, anything that's wrong with them is building up in the store, you know, it's building, and those people don't know how to get rid of it. So what happens, I mean, it'd be like that shooting, that boy, he probably had so much buildup in himself, that first thing he did, I mean, he came out of his violence, he killed his grandmother. And then after that,
It kind of unleashed.
he still had more buildup in him, so he went somewhere else, which was probably that school.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I just can't help but think he was a kid of what, like Neil says, of years of what was happening to him in his home, I mean, this stuff that happens that people don't notice, and without the Lord's help to do it just gets worse. It festers. It's like till it becomes something that you can't get rid of by yourself.
On the outside, he might look all right, but on the inside, I mean, he just built up.
Like an explosion is for that particular.
Go ahead, Ed.
When I was growing up in grade school, they used to, every morning our teacher she would read from the Bible and say a prayer before she started class. And when I remember I was still in, I think it was in the 8th grade, that's when they passed laws, you couldn't do it anymore. And she said, I don't care how many laws they passed, we're gonna say a prayer before we start class.
And she did do that. I don't remember doing that in school. Tommy's cousin was telling me the other day, and I hadn't thought of this. She said, you know, back in the old days, you hear the preachers preach like hellfire and brimstone. Mm-hmm. And she said, once the 60s came and the peace and love movement started happening, that they kind of started softening the message into a more Jesus loves you, you know, and that's when kind of things just started to evolve really fast after that. And after I thought about it, it's like I never thought about it, but I guess that makes sense as part of the big culture change.
Jesus is not involved in our schools anymore. Now, I think they used to at the high school. We go outside around the flag and stuff and pray. I don't know if they do that anymore, but it's just like our 10 Commandments. You can't put our 10 Commandments up. Well, we should have never let that happen. I think the Christians and the people should have stopped that, which I'm sure some tried, but the devil's got so many people a hold of them. They outweigh us, and a lot of Christians don't stand up. I'd be right in the middle of this abortion if I could afford to go. I don't know, they just took him completely out of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like everything has to be, and there's, you know, of the 10 Commandments, what's not good? Even if it didn't have to be related, is there anything that's bad to society in it?
There's nothing else, you just feel close. What's they gonna hurt? Then they got the choice of reading them or not.
Well, you know, I've always thought if the people that, you know, say, I don't believe there's a God, there's nothing in it, if there's nothing in it, why does this Bible bother you so bad?
Right.
Why can you not let that sit as a book on the shelf and leave it alone? It speaks to our soul, no matter what you think or who you are, it speaks to us.
And, you know, the Bible says everybody's got a soul. And you're going to one place or the other. So, I mean, in the Bible, it don't change.
I don't believe the Bible.
My mother used to remind us that every knee will bow before God. So if you've made your life and you know, I don't believe this happens, there will be every knee. You will not turn them down at Judgment Day. And I would rather, of my own accord, bow down.
It says,
No problem.
every eye shall see Jesus, but only the true in heart will see God.
Yeah, we're coming to the final crossroads. That's eternity. You know, I was talking to, I forget what Tommy was saying about live in the, however the length of life or whatever, but it's like, you know, our days on this earth are nothing compared to eternity. You can't even find 70 years on eternity. It's so vast. So, you know, you need to make this choice. Now it's a very important choice because it's life as a baker. And, you know,
I believe it was last fall, some football coach, and he was in high school, and he was after, they would pray, especially after a game. And, you know, they, a bunch of people got together because he was doing that, and he told them, he said, I don't make anybody pray, I just, you know, the one who wants to, and you know, they farm.
You can't do that at schools on.
So you're not even allowed to talk
But he,
about it in schools.
he said it's like, he said, I believe in God, and as long as I'm a Christian, we're gonna pray.
well, and why can't, you know, I do that? I think what Angie was saying, what I had heard at the high school, that they can do that, but it has to be student, like the teachers can't lead anything like that, it's just the students. I think, we have visited Jason Coulter's church one night, and the kids in their youth group, I think, are really active in that organization up there, because he was congratulating some of them for stepping forward and being leaders. And that's something, you know, if you think about in high school, for these young kids to stand up and do that, and to take the initiative to be a part of that, and the ones especially to take the initiative to be leaders in that we really should back them up when they do that, and recognize when they do that. And like the kids program and the youth program that started that, to give these kids the biblical education they need, because they're going to be leaders. You know, if they don't know to go forward now, they're going to be the church tomorrow. And, you know, it's really, some of these kids are pretty amazing at their faith and what they do.
Now, they used to keep, before school started, they'd go in the gym, and they would have like a Bible study or something. I don't know if they do that. It's been years since I worked in the high school. So I don't know if they still do that or not, or if they've stopped it. I don't. But that just,
When we got in high school, they stopped everything.
I thought they did, but now I don't wanna, they may be doing it, I don't know. Neil, do you know if they're,
I think some of the stuff that they're able to do, like if they go out and pray and stuff like that, it has to be like right before school time.
Yeah, it can't
Pretty
be
much
while
it can
school's
be
going
like
on.
right on school time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, when people come in, when they come in and stuff like that, it'd be right before the first mail or something like that.
So they could meet, so,
And like what you was talking about, like the sports, usually what messes that up is the boosters. I mean, it's a money thing. I mean, you get these, you do get some of these parents that complain about it, but I mean, you do have these boosters that complain about it, and that's where the athletics, they get a bunch of the money from, is from the boosters. So it's the boosters say that's wrong, they don't wanna lose that booster because of the money. Yeah,
Yeah, I know ours,
they put money before God.
but now you'll notice the other teams that Lincoln plays, like the baseball, I don't go much to the other ones. But now, you can watch those teams. Some of them will say a prayer before they go out on the field. And that, ours.
If I did misunderstand on the news, just a few days after that happened in Texas, I didn't catch the details, all I caught was the fact that they were calling on some of the churches to get involved in whatever they was talking about, and I thought, you pushed them out years ago, and this is the results of it.
yeah.
They want to get this gun control. I said, well, it's not the gun, it's the people they let them have it. I don't understand how an 18-year-old can buy a gun like that. And Jean said, well, now, wait a minute. An 18-year has to go to war and carry a gun and kill people like that. So what is the difference?
Yeah.
But you know, nobody needs an AK-47, no more than they need an M16.
Yeah,
That AK-47,
That should be army and police,
right?
yeah, well, and,
people protect.
When I was at Fort Knox, they give us a demonstration. We were using M16. And they shot him through an ammo gun, and it bounced around all over that thing and come right back out. And he said, you can get shot in the leg, and it'll fall up bone that'll come out the top of your head. It's a dangerous weapon. But he said, that's the reason we got the
we're at war,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, and I can't help but think, these kids, and probably what, 2 generations earlier, they've grown up with video games that totally, you know, you just add blow people up, and they, you know, that it's separation from real reality, that it you know, it has to kind of numb your senses
And
to
that's all they see.
violence.
Some of them soak it up
Yeah.
so much.
The AK-47 like M16, you got magazines on which 20 rounds. That M16 was fired 20 rounds in 3 seconds.
You know, it's the overpowerment of evil over good is just,
I think the bad up there was where those police didn't go in. They was waiting on the other ones and waited an hour. I don't know why they did that, but I think if they had went in, some of those children would still be alive. It just,
They said the guy in charge ordered them not to go in because they thought he had quit shooting. We thought,
you know, hindsight's 20/20, because I've listened to all this, and like you say, maybe they could have breached it, maybe they would have breached the door, and then he said that thing can fire off from the time they're breaking in that door. He could have done so much. And
They said the AK-47, that bullet would penetrate more like a plate than that long. So, they penetrate it and said go through the person and come out in that.
And, you know, and it's another thing of get rid of the police, we don't want them, but now we want the police. And, you know, it's just, it's a mixed up
It
society.
is, it's so sad.
Yeah, you know, if these teachings that we're trying to teach, if that were spread. And as Christians, I think we've got to work to pass these, you know, the people you see that you don't know what kind of life they're living, you know, that they need somebody that's a light to them. They need somebody to tell them about this, to make changes and give them hope for what's going in this world. Because some people, like we say, don't have any hope at all. So what is, whatever happens, happens, because they don't.
Well, as a parent, you've got to talk to your child, not just take them out for fun things or anything like that. You've got to have some discussions with them to make them understand. They don't understand what life's all about.
No.
But I remember my mother and daddy would, you know, bring all that out to us about what could happen or what's this, what's that. And I did that for Dennis. You can't let them go around in the dream world. And another thing, I stopped video games at our house when Dennis was about ninth grade, because he would look at you like he was in a daze or something, because he was so concentrating on those video games. And so I stopped him. I wouldn't buy him anymore. But a lady I worked with, she bought every new set that came out, you know, every Atari, everything, whatever. And I said, Dennis, I'm not buying them. You don't need them. You need to, you know, you need to concentrate on those things. And it brought him out of it, didn't it?
You can't take your eyes off of it the way they are. I mean, you just kind of sit there and like in a daze.
But you know,
But I was the parent, and it was my
Yeah.
place to stop it, because he didn't know.
another thing too is you get people that don't go to church, their kids don't go. And when they get grown, when they don't go to church, they don't take
Well,
their
it
kids.
just goes down.
Yeah.
It's both ways.
That the cycle just get, you know, you may have had a parent back in or a grandparent that you recall that went to church, but like you say, if as parents, you don't teach them, you know, if you hear kids talk about, and think back even in your childhood, it wasn't what was bought for you, that your favorite time or the times that you had spent together, that you all did stuff, that, you know, your parents took time and looked you in the eye, whether they bought you anything, that wasn't, but, you know, since both parents have worked, we've kind of changed to where you buy, now, I'm not with you, so I'm going to buy you all this stuff to make up for that time, and it's not making up
They
for it.
want to occupy their time with something else because they don't have time.
So
Yeah.
that's-
You know,
Yeah.
I know a boy that when he was growing up, his parents never went to church. And he didn't go until he got married. And his wife, he started going and he got saved. But his kids, he was divorced the first time, right? He married the second time, and then he started going to church first. And he got saved, and he said, I wish now that, you know, I went to church, because he asked me, he said, his daughter goes to church, but his son doesn't go to church. He's been in the army, stayed 20 years, got out, retired. And he's even got a job down at Fort Knox teaching what he's done in the army. But on the weekends, he's got a beer tank set up. A lot of his buddy friends come around, army friends come out, and friends all this. And he said, well, I wish, I've talked to him about the church, he said, he just, you know, and he said, what do you do? I said, the only thing you can do is pray. I said, God's the only one that can change.
Once they can, and you do wish that you'd done it. I told you that this lady that Bible study I've been going to, she said she got out of church because her children were little and they were making noise and moving around in church, and she said, I hated to disturb everybody in church, and she said, what I did was my child missed out because I was worried about that my child was making noise in church and stuff.
Preachers that say, or I've heard them, you know, bring those kids, I can get as loud as those kids can. They can preach over.
Well, as mean as Dennis was, I would never ever miss church. Because I spent
And
most,
he ain't me.
oh, he was then, I spent most of my time in the basement of the church. You know, one time he was crying so that everybody was wondering what in the world was wrong with him. There wasn't nothing wrong with him but being mean. There's nothing wrong with him.
I wheeled one of mine one time, and the Sunday school teacher come over, and, well, I took them in the bathroom. And she come back in that bathroom, and she said, "That's enough." And she took it. Well, let me whip you no more.
It is hard, and I remember times on Wednesday night, I go home and cry and tell my neighbor I'm tired and I can't wrestle hard all night. And, you know, she's like, just keep with her and she'll learn, and they do. But they expect, you know, that's what we've left out is,
Being a parent.
yeah.
Not being a parent.
You're not their friend.
No.
You know, I mean, I guess now when they grow up, it's one thing. I enjoy the friendship I have with my daughter now. I'm still her parent. I don't care how old she is.
That's exactly
You know,
right.
that part does not change. You can kind of let down just a little bit, but you're the parent.
Dennis got mad at something I did. And he said, You're no fun. You're mean and all this stuff. I said, I am not your friend. I said, I'm here to make you mine. That's what I'm gonna do. And as long as you live in this house, you're gonna go to church regardless, you know?
And we see the good story on the other end of that, you know, Dennis is now preaching and he had to get the mean knocked out of him when he was little. But
Well, partly, I guess.
He was hard as you.
Oh, yes, like his dad.
You get the daughters, they get the.
I'm gonna put that shirt on you,
Yeah, we gonna have to
But
get
it's
church.
hard to work and be a parent,
Yeah.
but you gotta do it.
Yeah,
Well, we did it. Our mother and daddies did it. They didn't get to sit, you know, the work, you got to feed them and stuff.
yeah. Yeah, they weren't gone away on the job like we were, as much, you know, the parents were home more, but that's hard, and they had to do physical labor and stuff, so we just, you know, can't expect somebody else, to raise our kids. It's,
When they first came out, no telephone like her, and I wrote we killed a bunch of ground with chemicals, you know, like this in one. I took Daddy around and showed him, you know, the corner, before we broke that later. And he looked at that cornfield and he said, well, if this works, I've done a lot of hard work. So that fall, I took him back around and I showed him the corn crop.
all the plowing, and he didn't have probably the big tractors on
He
him.
used to plow and then drain and this, and then have blankets, you know, and then cold bladed. And this, sprayed it, blanket, forgot.
Didn't leave it.
Yeah, and I mean, it made, well, twice as much corn as what he used to, and the ground didn't wash.
Things have, so, you know, talking about when we came, that a lot of technology has improved a lot, but humankind is just kind of sinking backwards in the midst of it.
We bought one of the second rollers in the county over there. We rolled up, a bunch of hay and they wouldn't give any rain. Our neighbor, he probably on his nose, they swarmed, it wasn't supposed to rain, but it was pouring around. And I said, Daddy, would you rather have this or that? He said, well, that old squirrel building will be on camera. I don't know about this.
Plus picking it up, but I don't want to do it. Well, thank you guys. I think we've run out of time. I see Patsy and Cecil have arrived.